What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? And thank you and welcome back to another episode of Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I'm your host, Piers Austin, and we are brought to you live by Multicontinental Wrestling Alliance on Facebook and on YouTube. Tonight, I've got a very special guest, a guest whose beard almost is as good as this one right here, guys. But, he only grew it during quarantine. This one's been going for many years. But, guys, I digress. Before I bring on my guest tonight, let's take a quick second, a quick pause for the cause, a quick moment to thank the people that keep these mother effing lights on. First up is A-Rock Design. So A-Rock Designs is the company that you're seeing all around in those Facebook groups and Facebook pages. They make custom wrestling cups, hoodies, keychains, T-shirts, tumblers, you name it, they make it. They actually made me this amazing CM Punk tumbler. Everyone that knows me, I'm a big fan of CM Punk. They do great stuff. They even made my kids a couple of cups and my wife. So make sure you go and show some love to those guys. Get your order in. Speak to Ashley Rodriguez, and she will take care of you with a great price and a great product. My next sponsor for this evening is Signal Studios. So if you're a professional wrestler, an independent professional wrestler, and you need a new entrance song, you need some new music to sort of help you get to the ring and help you leave the ring, hit up Rafi Tomasian from Signal Studios. They're a recording studio based here in Sydney, Australia. They can mix, master, make tracks, and send it out to you anywhere in the world. Also, if you're a musician and you want a place to rehearse or a place to record, Signal Studios has the most comfortable recording space and rehearsal space in Sydney. It's absolutely amazing. It's nice, it's private, it's very unique, very intimate, so you can get the best music that you're wanting to get out of your production. Also, guys, my third and final sponsor, who I am harassing for an image, but they haven't given me one yet, is WASF Championship Belts. That's right, WASF Championship Belts. Every wrestling fan either owns a replica belt or a championship belt or wants to own one. So if you want to get your hands on a custom belt or a replica of your favorite championship belt, head over to WASF Championship Belts. They've got special payment plans where you can pay your belt off for as little as $30 to $40 per month, and you can get that belt in your hand and you can have some belts on the wall like that I've got up behind me. But guys, without further ado, I'm going to bring him out. He is a PWA star, Czw Bonza. Jack, thanks for coming on, man. How's it going?
Hey, Piers, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No worries, man. Thanks for, sitting there through all the sponsorship plugs. But, mate, look, it's very exciting to have you on and be sitting here and talking to you on this Tuesday evening or Tuesday morning over in the United States. Mates, how's everything been for you guys? PWA is starting to do a couple of shows since quarantine. What have you been doing to keep yourself sort of active and sort of motivated since quarantine?
Man. I mean, it's the same as everyone, man. It's been rough. It's been real rough. Like, yeah. I mean, luckily, we're in New South Wales, so we've had we're at a point now where we've had no community transmission cases for nearly 2 weeks, I think.
Yep.
But we've had the gyms reopen, we've had the training schools be able to reopen in the last couple of months. So we've had something to work towards. We're able to do some shows with no fans in the audience, and then hey Adam,
Alcoholic Adam in the house.
Alcoholic Adam, that's him. Yeah, hey Carl. So that's the stuff we've been able to push towards. There's another big project we've been working on too that should debut. Yeah, I've got a beard now. The debut of my beard. No one's seen it. I've been deliberately not posting pictures of my face.
Well, originally you knocked me back for the interview because you didn't want to show your face.
That was it. I pushed it back, but I mean, I'm going to be on the show on Saturday, so I figured it's all right. We can dip our toes in the beard pool. But yeah, we've been trying to do it. So just focusing on me personally. I just had a kid, man. I got a 2-month-old baby upstairs. So that kind of took a lot of my focus during
Congratulations.
Pandemic. Thank you. Yeah, no, everything's going well with him. He's doing well. Juggernaut
little boy.
His name, yeah, little boy. So he's I mean, it was a bit different, having a baby during a pandemic. Like we couldn't have anybody visit the hospital. Yeah. Like most of the time when you have a baby, you get all the family around and stuff like that. We couldn't do it. Like you had to have like one person a day. Like it couldn't even be one at a time. It had to just be one a day, and they had to go through all these checks and do all this stuff. So Thanks, Carl. So it's just kind of one of those things where, you have to be careful, but that's been taking up a lot of time, a lot of adjustment. You know what I mean? Like I never slept much at the best of times, but now, I've got to work out the times I can do the feeds and then still get sleep and then still do, all the other business stuff as well as fitting in training and doing all that kind of stuff. And I love anytime fitness, like the gym, like, because I can go there whenever I feel like it. So half the time I end up at gym at 1 a.m. in the morning, but because of the COVID restrictions, they have to have manned hours, which means it shuts at 9 p.m., which means I have to get to the gym early, which is just killing me. So it's good, but it could be a lot worse. I got some mates up in Victoria who still haven't been able to go to the gym for about 6 months. So I think they're dying. But yeah, that's mostly what I've been keeping up with, man. Just still trying to train, working on the baby. My other job, my other business wasn't really affected by COVID, so I was lucky enough then.
That's good, man.
Yeah,
that's good. At least you didn't have to have the whole world come to a standstill completely for you. But you got into pro wrestling in the early 2000s when Australian wrestling was kind of like, I don't want to say like renegade, but it was kind of like the inmates running the asylum in that early time. And, to be around, obviously since the early 2000s to now, almost, 20 years, what are some of the key things that you've seen change over time within that time since you first started?
The main thing that struck me early on that I think goes underrated is the change in professional looking gear. So like when I started, I think the first match I ever had, I was wearing like footy shorts. And it was kind of like, just wasn't frowned upon. Like it was just because everybody wore jeans or singlets or pants or that kind of thing. Like there weren't any guys who were in good physical shape, and there weren't any guys who were wearing tights or trunks or boots. Or if they were relatively rare. And so like there was kind of this internal competition with some of the new young guys who got in the same time as me, like Jay Law and Scotty Clubb and Adam Hoffman and a few of those other guys, many of whom aren't around anymore, but who were more like getting into the bodybuilding side and then trying to wear tights and trying to physically look better than each other. And I think that was just one of the major changes. Like when one of the things we struggle with is when people would come to events, they would see WWE and they would see the local show and they would be like, this isn't the same thing. And they wouldn't expect the same thing because they thought the local stuff was just, this is just this, that, and whatever. But I guess one of the main differences was we kind of evolved to the point where people come in and they see the wrestlers and they see the stage and they see the ring and they're like, this is comparable. Like we went from being something that was not the same thing to something that we're still obviously not doing a 70,000 rand. We're still not the same thing, but it's more comparable, and I think that's kind of getting shown in the amount of guys who are starting to get noticed and signed overseas. Like that's been shown with like Buddy Murphy with the TM16 TMDK, like Shane Thorne and stuff they're doing, like Robbie Eagle's gone to Japan, like more and more guys. The Iconics are getting picked up. The stuff that we're doing is being looked at and being taken seriously.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of that was the first thing that really evolved for me. It was the way the wrestlers looked. It was no longer jeans and singlets in the backyard. It was good looking wrestlers in professional looking gear. And then and that was still kind of it. Like it was still kind of like community halls and RSL clubs and stuff like that for the longest time. It's really only been the last 3 or 4 years that we've started to really pick up production.
No, and I was just going to say, like you're 100% right. I think guys sort of took it more along the lines of, if I want to do this as a profession, I want to get to the highest stage that I can possibly get to. I need to invest time in my body, my gear, money in my gear, and actually look like a professional wrestler. And pro wrestling is a visual entertainment. It needs to have that visual stimulant from the fan. It's like if they're seeing guys rocking up in their footy gear, look like they just come from footy training. They can't put that comparison together of the two. Yeah. But where did you originally train when you started?
I started at AWF. It was the first place that popped up when you type Australian wrestling into Google. And they had a really professional looking website and stuff like that. So I started there. I was there. I trained for about a year. And the main trainers at the time were Jay Law and a guy named Dylan Neist, who's Billy Flyswat, and Mark Hilton and Incognito were a few of those guys, most of whom still aren't there now, but they were very good for the time. And And then I was there for about a year and a half. And I kind of went overseas. I spent some time with School of Hard Knocks, like Jesse Hernandez in California, which is the same place that like Shane Haste and a lot of those guys spent time when they went overseas. And that's where I met like Rocky Romero and stuff for the first time. So that was a really cool trip. Then I came back, and then I went to then I started working with PWA, and I started working with Rock and Roll Wrestling and Wollongong, and then like Newcastle Pro Wrestling formed as well. And then that's kind of been what I've stuck with since locally. AWF originally, but I didn't spend very much time there. In retrospect, but no, it was good time. It was a good group of guys at the time, man. Like that was one of the fun things that one of the things that you kind of missed. Like we would train every Saturday, and it was just what we did on Saturdays. We would show up there at 9 o'clock. You would hang out with the guys. You would be around wrestling. You know, you would teach. You would hang out with the classes. You would perform in classes. Like I was always. You couldn't get me away from it. Like so I lived. It was a 2.5 hour trip for me to get to training.
Oh, wow.
I didn't drive. Even if I did drive, it was still 2.5 hours. But I would have to get the bus to the city, and then I would have to get the train to Minto, and then I would walk from Minto to where the thing was. And so to get there on Saturday morning at 9 a.m., I'd have to leave at 6 a.m. And then you advance from the 9 o'clock class to the 11 o'clock class, and then I could leave at about 8:30 and get there on time. But what I would do is, as soon as I graduated from the beginners to intermediates, I would still train with the beginners and the intermediates. And then when I got to the advanced class, I would still train with the intermediates, and I would do the advanced class, and I would help teach. I would be the bump guy for the earlier class. And then after I did that for a little while, and I hadn't graduated the second class yet or whatever like that, but they would start letting me train with the third class because I just wouldn't go away. And I'm doing all the squats and push-ups and stuff with them. They really just couldn't get me things. So I worked at it very quickly, and we started in a boxing ring, right? So that place was a boxing ring with some thin pads over the top of it, and that's where
brutal.
Yeah, that was what they do. There was one day in the 3 months that you were trained that they would just call it like Powerbomb Day. And that was just where they just punished everybody with every power move there was, so that you knew how to do them. But you didn't have to endure them for all the rest of the time. So
I can just imagine 2.5 hours on the way back, like traveling back home after like doing that much training, and then on Powerbomb Day where you've just been slammed about 100 times. Yeah. That must have been
your body kind of adjusts. Like it just does. Like, I mean, I'm a younger man too, you know.
Yeah.
13 years ago, I don't know if I could do it now. But even basic stuff like, you know, running the ropes, like people don't realize you start running the ropes, you get these nasty marks down your back and stuff like that when you first start doing that kind of stuff. After a few weeks, you adjust. Like you do arm drags and you get these like ridiculous red like marks and all stuff, like just rub burns from doing arm drags, and then all of a sudden you don't. And so you get used to that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden you bump in a wrestling ring, and it's like a dream. Like it's like when it's like a boxing ring that's made of concrete. So that's you adjusted to it, but then the second you stop doing it, you unadjust to it, and now there's no way in the world I could ever possibly go back.
So when you went overseas to America and, you know, training in Hard Knocks, what was the difference in the training like that you found between AWF and over there? Was it like night and day, or was it like very similar? Like, okay, intermediate, you start here, you go to here, and then you go on to, you know, master class or advanced?
Okay. No, they had a beginner's class. The main difference is that the AWF original classes, they would all run on Saturdays because it wasn't a pro wrestling facility. It was a boxing facility that they rented on Saturdays. So you would go in there and they would squeeze in every class between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturday, and that's what AWF rented the place out for at the time. They've moved a bunch of times since. It's not the same thing. Not like PWA or Newcastle Pro now, who have their own dedicated facilities where the rings are set up all the time and weights, gyms and stuff. Again, I guess another thing that's changed since the early thing is the training facilities are insane. Like we have a permanent fixture with the ring always lives that has weights, that has mats, that has everything there. Like our show on Saturdays is coming from it. So the fact that it's not just renting somebody else's thing, it's like we have our own thing now. makes such a difference to the training. So I'll kind of loop around back to it. But at the time, you would train on Saturdays, and that was all you could do. The main difference when you go over there was they had I can't remember if they had a more dedicated facility. I think they were in the middle of like a weight training gym, but the ring was always set up. So they would actually have training Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, or something like that. And then they would do their shows on Saturdays. So the main difference was that you could go every day instead of having to go once a week. Whereas when you're only trained once a week, it's difficult to advance. Like you have a 6-day break in between everything. Like trying to practice the small minutiae of wrestling and only get in there once a week is very, very difficult. You're not going to advance as quickly.
It's restricting.
Yeah, I think if you're training 4 or 5 days a week, you can be ready to have a match in 3 months. If like a very basic one. But if you're training once a week, it takes a year. Even if you're very, very good, even if you're very talented. So I think that was the main difference that I experienced, was that it's like, oh crap, I can go wrestle every day, and I can train every day, which is what made the overseas trip worthwhile, just that you could go and train, and also you had access to world-class people. See, that was the difference between, I think, Australian wrestling back then and American wrestling especially, is that over in America, because there's so much work, like guys can make a living working 4 or 5 days a week, like just different shows, traveling around, doing all that kind of stuff. In Australia, especially in the early 2000s, you'd be lucky to have one booking every 3-4 weeks. So, and that was the old thing too, is that if you worked for AWF, you weren't allowed to work for anywhere else. We've changed it a bit now, but over there, there was nothing like that. It was unheard of. So you could work everywhere, which meant you could get a lot more practice too. But it also meant that you could work with people who had worked 4 or 5 days a week for 20 years. So you can work with people who have a lot more experience and a lot more skill, and they can teach you, which means you get better quicker. Whereas over here, those people, like the veterans, were not the same as the veterans over there. And that's not to even try and knock the veterans who are here. But like we're talking, if you were over there, you might have gotten to work with Ric Flair. Like, you know what I mean? Like you might have gotten to work with these ridiculous top-level names who just knew everything and had been doing it for years. Whereas over here, you never got a chance to work with anybody like that experience. So it was a more slow progression. And I think that's what we're kind of moving towards, is that so many guys are going overseas and gotten so much better and stuff like that. Our newer guys, like I say to them all the time, like I'm talking, like you look at the newer guys like Jessica Troy or Kingsley or Steph Delander or Ricky South or any of those people, is that I'm just like, you're so much better than I was with your level of experience. Like when you're 3 or 4 years in and you're that good, I was nowhere near that good at 3 or 4 years in. So I can only imagine how good you're going to be when you've been around for 12 years. Like, you can imagine how good the people that they will teach how to wrestle after that will go. So it's going to take time, but eventually that's how we've started to raise the skill level, I think, just passing it all down. So I think that was the main difference between America. But I went to America 4 times. Like I spent time in Los Angeles the first time. The second time I went to Booker T's school in Houston.
Wow, that'd be a great school to go to.
Yeah, man. Like it was such an ideal timing thing, because the places that I went to after that was Philadelphia, which was such a hotbed of pro wrestling. So I went to Shikara and Ring of Honor and CZW and what was the other one? WXW?
WXW, yeah, the Anawahi family, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I was there. So I kind of did a bunch of stuff with them. But the good thing was that Booker T does nothing fancy.
Someone, Facebook user, if you'd like to show us your name, click the link above, streamyard.com/faceyard, so we can bring out, it just grants permission to StreamYard to bring up your name and profile picture. But I hope you're enjoying that quarter pounder.
You gotta make a Phoenix burger, guys. You gotta impress me. Like it's gotta be something real, Like you gotta get that like triple cheeseburger, but you also get 10 nuggets, and then you put 3 nuggets between every layer of the. Dude, just tomato sauce. It's a Phoenix burger. Bonza burger.
Dude, I got a buddy of mine who reckons he can eat 6 quarter pounders, double quarter pounders in one sitting. And I told him, I said, I will pay him money to see him do that. But if he vomits, he doesn't get the money.
No, of course not. No, you don't get to vomit. It's cheating.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway. It's not a matter of can you, it's should you, I think normally is the problem. But
exactly.
What I was saying was yeah, Booker's stuff was all so basic. Like, it was such an interesting concept because he wouldn't take training classes. Like, I'd get there probably 2 hours earlier before everybody else because, I had nothing else to do. I'm in Philadelphia. Like, I'm in Houston, and I'm just there to train. So that's all I did 24 hours. It was the most shredded I'd ever been. Like, that's all I did. So I would get the bus, and then I would walk 45 minutes from the bus. Me and Rob Barnes, who was with me there at the time, and we would walk to training, and then we would annoy the guy who had the key to get there and open the facility for us. And then there was nobody there. So but I mean, this is when Booker T's school was like 6 wrestling rings and a running track and a full weights gym. It was like, I think he was trying to become the developmental system for WWE. Like, he had everything. So most of the time, but then 10 guys would show up to training. So you'd have a ring each. But you kind of get there, and I would do laps around the track. I would do push-ups. I would do sit-ups. I would run through my own rolls. I would do all this other kind of stuff. And then everybody else would show up to training. And then you would get there, and then they would have to warm up, and then I'd have to be getting them to do drills with me, because what would happen is Booker T would come, sit in his office for an hour, then come out to training after I'd already been there for 3.5, 4 hours, and then he'd go, "Show me 5." I'd go, "Yes, sir." And then we would do a 5-minute match, and that's all it would be. And then he'd go, "Show me 7." And he would just call stuff to you, but you do not plan things. It was on the fly. Everything had to be on the fly. And that's what you did 5-6 days a week. It would just be singles matches or tag team matches. And then he would give you advice. And so it would start, even the first day, we did a thing, and they were just he said, "Oh, the way you guys tie up isn't good. This is how you have to tie up instead. And this is how you would push, and this is how you would do that." And you go, "Okay." And then the next day when we'd get to training 3 hours early, all we would do was drill how to tie up. And so then when he goes, show me 4, and the first thing I do is tie up the way he told me to tie up the day before, he's happy. But then I grab a headlock and do a tackle, and then afterwards he goes, "You did the tackle wrong. Here's how you've got to do a tackle." So then we would get there the next day, and we would drill tackles for 4 hours. And so, and we would just build up. And so that would kind of get to the point where we'd get through a whole match, and he just goes, "That was perfect. I can't fault a single thing you did technically, da-da-da-da. But it was boring. Make it more interesting." Like, fucking okay.
Because you're so worried about okay, got to do the hook up right, got to do and then, but that's the thing. It sounds like you guys going there at Booker T's school, you guys already knew the basics of what to do, how to bump, how to do the basics of pro wrestling. It sounds like his school was more of that fine tuning and tightening it up.
Yeah, that's what it was. Because you just didn't have anybody that good who knew what they were doing that well in Australia to have access to. But now I can go back and I can teach them all the stuff that Booker T taught me. So, and that was the idea. And there are tons of other guys who have had similar experiences with similarly experienced guys who are bringing that to Australia, which is why Australian wrestling started to blow up, because we're actually starting to get all that extra experience. But the reason why that was such a perfect thing was because then when I went to, say, the Ring of Honor school, I think the Ring of Honor school get a lot of dickheads showing up. They get a lot of people who are just "Oh, it's Ring of Honor." And I mean, this is, we're not talking about now Ring of Honor. We're talking about 2010 Ring of Honor. So this is relatively speaking, Ring of Honor, the company, in terms of India. I guess 2005, 2006, probably their peak with Daniel Bryan, but they're still still massive. So it was I think they would get a lot of guys walking in, and the first thing they wanted to do was show them their 630 splash, they would, or their fancy stuff, and do all this other kind of gear. So the Ring of Honor school was funny because the only reason I got in there was because Madison Eagles vouched for me. Otherwise they didn't know who I was. And then and then we would do training, and they would just get us to do the warm-ups, but they wouldn't let me in the ring, because they didn't know who I was, and they didn't know whatever. And then they got me, they would do, "Okay, guys, today we're going to do tag matches. You be the referee." And so I would referee the matches for them. I'm talking I'm 4 years into wrestling, but you had to prove yourself to them, And then eventually one of the guys, they were going to do another tag match, but he's like, "My shoulder's a little sore." So they go, "Okay, you can participate in this match, but all you're going to do is this one small thing." And then I'm like, "Okay." And then I did it. But then they saw that I wasn't being an idiot. I was doing whatever. So I think it took 6 or 7 weeks until they kind of accepted me. But once they started letting me actually do stuff, they were happy and they were impressed, because they were like, "You can do the basics. You can do the basics very well. And now we can help you build upon that foundation. Whereas if people walked in and they're like, let me show you my 630 splash, and they're like, can you show me if you can do a tie-up first? And that guy can't do a tie-up properly, then they know that you're not doing it properly.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things, going to Booker T's first and then going to Ring of Honor, because Booker T's fine-tuned the basic stuff so much. When I went to the places known for the fancier stuff, and they could see that I already had such a strong foundation of basics because I'd already spent all that time drilling them, then they were happier to have me there, you know. So it actually worked out well, because if I'd gone to Ring of Honor first and then gone to Booker T's, it would have been like, I don't think it would have gone as successfully.
Was there any ever talk, like after being at the Ring of Honor school, would they talk about putting you on shows or contracts?
So I was on their shows. I was just on their dark matches, but I mean, I was only 4 or 5. I was only probably 4 years in. Like, I wasn't good enough to compete on their roster. The other thing is too, because they were such a real company, you know, you need a green card, you need a visa to work for them. So like, they won't let you work for them unless you have a visa, and I didn't have a visa to work over there, so I couldn't do any matches where I had to, you know, appear on television, appear on pay-per-view, or you know, charge anybody any money. So that was one of those things.
You also mentioned, you know, going and training with CZW. So I'm not sure if you can actually see that, but I'm a huge indie mark. That's a replica CZW world title that's there. So I've been a huge fan of theirs. So there's definitely questions I've got about that. But you know, when did you go and train over in the CZW gym?
I think, if memory serves, it was 2010 and 2011, maybe 2011, 2012. So it was interesting because the first time I went there, it was while their training facilities were still at the CZW, at the ECW arena in Philly, like the what's it called? It's a building called
2300 Arena.
2300 Arena, that's one, yeah. So they were training in like a back room of that facility, and so was Shikara, because I think they were in between a training, like they shared it. So like Shikara, it'd be the same building.
They had a joint venture, I think, for a long time.
Yeah. So I was there for that. So like Mondays would be Shikara, Tuesdays would be CZW, Wednesdays I'd go to Ring of Honor, Thursdays would be CZW, Fridays would be Shikara, like whatever. So I kept I just kept going to the same the same place, and I'm like, oh, this works for me. So that was really cool. But I mean, the CZW stuff was like, I mean, DJ High was there, but the main person I trained with was Drew Gulak. So he was in charge of the beginners class, and he helped a lot with the advanced class too. So I spent a lot of time with Drew Gulak while I was over there. He was nice enough to let me ride around with him and do all that kind of stuff. But I mean, the funny story that I always tell from CZW is when I'm there and there's not much else to do, and like it's like the beginners class, and they're like not allowed in the ring yet because they haven't advanced to that point. And they're like, "Do you mind going over there and running some training drills with that guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem. I'm always happy to do whatever you guys want me to help." And then basically it was just they were just like, he was just getting back into it, and so he just wanted to get a taste of it and do all that kind of stuff. And like he was getting us to run actual matches, but instead of taking your time with things, just sprint. So it was like a drill to get his fitness back, but also run through the fitness and do all that kind of stuff like that. So we run like 4 or 5 training matches in a row, just sprinting through the whole thing, and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, "Oh yeah, thanks, man." And I'm just like, I'm like, which one are you again? Like, I'm trying to be a dick. I'm like which, like, you look familiar, like I'm not sure which one. And he's just like, "Oh, I'm Dean Ambrose." I'm like, "Oh, cool." Like, he's fucking like John Moxley, you know. Like, I'm just kind of like, "Oh yeah, no, you're the champ, aren't you?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm CZW champ." Like, I was just, oh, yeah, cool. So I always have the time on there. I mean,
that's hilarious. I just about, oh yeah, I'm John Moxley, you know, just the champ.
He's got a real name, you know. It was just like, I was just kind of like, "Oh, that's right, you're fucking wrestling as this," and that was the thing. And so then you're looking back at it, and he debuts in the Shield. I'm like, "Oh, I know that guy."
But like when you were training there, like, did you ever get, like, obviously over in the States, you know, training with Chikara, Ring of Honor, CZW, did you get the opportunities to, like, you got some opportunities in some dark matches with the Ring of Honor, but what about Shikara and CZW? Did they give you an opportunity?
CZW, DJ Hyde did not like me. Like, not personally. He just wasn't a fan of my wrestling. He just didn't rate me. So he I just never really got an opportunity there. Shikara, 2 years in a row, 2018 and 2019, me, Mick Moretti, and Adam Hoffman are the finalists in King of Trios.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, we've nearly won King of Trios 2 years in a row. So yeah, we got some opportunities with Shikara because we had we had a better relationship with Shikara. But yeah, Caesar just wasn't a fan of me. So I mean that happens sometimes. There's actually a funny one because I think the second time I went there, the 2300 arena was being renovated and they were getting kicked out. I think someone had bought it and they'd taken it over, and so they had set up their training facility in like a smaller building across the street. And I hadn't been there because they just didn't have training on. I just went at the worst possible time for that second period for that second training period to see him. But what they did have was they held a Kevin Nash seminar. So I think it's still on High Spots. I think you can still watch the CZW Kevin Nash because they filmed it. And so it was me and Grizzly Redwood. And we went up there, and you can see me sitting in the background of this Kevin Nash seminar while he's giving his talks and does stuff like that. And so I think we were the second match. I think the first one was DJ and guy's name escaping me. Sammy
Callahan.
Callahan, that's it. Yeah, they did a training match, and he talked over that. The second one was me and Grizzly Redwood. So you can kind of hear him off camera, and this is the problem. Like DJ got me and Madison Eagles confused. So what's happened is like I've tied up with him, Grizzly, and Grizzly's shorter than me, so I've kind of like done some takedowns and I've done different stuff with him. So he's but I'm pretty smooth with the mat wrestling. That's the thing I like to practice is the chain wrestling. That's my thing. So you can actually kind of hear something. I know what was said now in retrospect. He said he's gone over to DJ and he said, "Is that guy an amateur wrestler? Like, does he know amateur wrestling?" And DJ's gone, "Yeah." And he's going, "Have you done anything like that?" And he goes, "I think he did some, he definitely did some amateur wrestling training and did this different stuff like this." I have never done any amateur wrestling in my entire life. Madison Eagles, I think, trained with the Olympic team. So he's got to be in, because we were there at the same time. So, like, it's easily confused, and I can understand it. But what's happened is he also hasn't heard me speak. So he's assuming that I'm American. So, like, we've gone, when he's giving advice, he goes, because you're wearing, I think I was wearing my gear, or he asked me about my gear. He says, "What are you wearing?" I said, "I wear trunks." And he goes, "Well, you should wear an amateur singlet. Like, you obviously have an amateur wrestling background." And I was going, "No, I don't." And he's like, "Well, maybe you do now. Like, your wrestling looks smooth. Maybe you pretend you can be like an all-American American." And I was going, "I'm Australian," like in the most Ocker accent. And then I'm just like, and as soon as I've said it, I'm just going, why am I calling out Kevin Nash? Like, what am I doing? Like, why did I do that? Like, I could have said it in a much less dickish way. Like, or I could have just gone,
what was his reaction? Was he like, "What the fuck?" Or did he just go, "Oh, whatever"? Like,
I'm not going to ruin Kevin Nash's day. He doesn't give a shit. That guy's so cool. Like, he was just like, he was fucking amazing. He wasn't upset or anything. It was just in my head. I'm just going, why did I say that? Like, but no, I went up to him afterwards. I went, "Oh, sorry, man. I didn't mean to come across like that." He goes, "No, brother, you're cool." He's the tallest person I've ever stood next to. Like, a lot of the guys, you meet them and you're like, "Oh, you're tall, but it's not that big a deal." I'm looking up at Kevin Nash. Like, he was incredible. So that was great. So that's one of those. Yeah, that's my mental associations with CZW. The time I trained with John Moxley, Drew Gulak in general, and the time I was a dick to Kevin Nash for no reason.
I tell you what though, training with Drew Gulak would be like, he's a phenomenal wrestler. Like the stuff that he's done in WWE, he just hasn't really been given much of an opportunity over there. But like, I've watched a lot of his stuff from the Indies and CZW and PWG, and that guy is just phenomenal. Like, Gulak's amazing.
Drew Gulak is a fucking man. There's no one. He's just He's the best. I love him. He's the exact style of wrestling that I like to watch. He's just hard-nosed, straightforward killer. He's great.
Oh, he's amazing.
I can't recommend Drew enough.
So you came back and you joined up with PWA. So how did that sort of come about? Like, obviously, you mentioned like Madison Eagles vouch for you. Was that before you went to PWA? Or was that after?
No, that was after. So I mean, again, especially early on, a lot of the Australian feds were antagonistic with each other. So like, if you worked for one, you weren't allowed to work for another, and that was AWF and PWA. But PWA was then and still is now like the center of like women's wrestling in Australia, and that's because of Madison. Like it's been owned and run by Madison for years in some capacity, and it's been her life's work to have women's pro wrestling like be an important thing, not be a joke, not be the piss break match, like not be there as TNA, like serious proper women's wrestling. That's her thing. That's her vision that we've tried to enact as much as possible. And so at the time, I was my girlfriend was Shazza McKenzie, who was a female wrestler, and she was invited to the PWA school to work at PWA, because at the time it was Jesse McKay, aka Billy Kay, was there, and Madison. They didn't really have a lot of other female options. So when they saw Shazza wrestling, like, oh, she's pretty good. We'd like to have her be part of our women's stuff here as well. And they had a training facility that was just down the road. And me just wanting to do everything I can in wrestling, I went with her. So
absolutely, take your gear, brother.
So we just started training there, and then it was just kind of like it was just a little different, like it was like we had the AWF had that camaraderie with a lot of the guys. There were a lot of very good wrestlers there, but PWA was a lot more plugged into like the indie stuff and like the current, like, this is what's cool on the lower level, whereas AWF, most of the guys were like WWE, kind of like, it was more marketable than it was like the serious indie kind of shit. And that's important, it's stupid to try and compete with WWE and do things the way they do things. You've got to find something different when you're small. If you can't be better, be different. So they had a lot more of that stuff going on. And I've always just been a big believer in learning from multiple masters. Like, if you learn from the same person all the time, you're only going to get so good. If you learn from different people, even if like you have the best wrestling trainer in the world, you're still going to be better off learning from the best wrestling trainer and the second best wrestling trainer. Like, you've got to go around and have different experiences and work with different people. And so, I just tagged along with her and I enjoyed it. But I was doing both, and I never would have stopped doing both, except for the fact that the AWF promoter found out and said, oh, if you do that again, then I'll stop booking you. And I went, well, fuck you, I'm going to keep doing it. So that was the that was the extent of it. But then after that was when we started doing more traveling, and we started to go around, and that's building more of a relationship with Madison, and Robbie was there at the time too, and then later Mick Moretti. See, Mick Moretti started at AWF too, so there were guys who jumped across, but that was mostly it. It was interesting because they had a training, but like, I'm talking, they were walking distance from each other. I would go to one in the morning and then walk to the other one. So it was a good day for Bonza, but
not so much a good day for AWF.
No.
But when you joined PWA, a short while later, you got involved in the sort of backstage management side of things as well. Like, it wasn't too much long after that, and from more of the business side of things than opposed to the in-ring talent side of things. How did you get involved in that side of it, of the actual business of PWA, and where did you see the gaps in that business to be able to come in and make that suggestion and make those changes to broaden that horizon for the company?
Well, I mean, the thing is that, like, it wasn't really that soon. Like, it was I probably started helping out mid 2016. So I'd kind of been with PWA for like maybe 8 years already, just as a wrestler. I'd been helping out more with Newcastle Pro. So Newcastle Pro, me and the other guys, kind of like a lot of the wrestlers there built up from the ground, just because there was a market there and we lived closer to there, and we had this kind of vision. But I kind of felt a little bit limited by the area. Like, it's not metropolitan Sydney. Like, it's harder. Like, there's less money up there. People aren't willing to pay as much, like different kind of stuff. And then trying to do like the visions that I thought we could do with show, it just wasn't there. So I got involved in PWA. I actually offered to buy it from them, and they said no. So if I just start helping out, because my skill is that like I have a bachelor's degree in business where I majored in management and human resources management, and I have a master's degree in accounting. So like my private business, I worked as a insolvency accountant, and then I worked as a taxation accountant for years, and then I also run a I've had a few businesses over there, but the current one that's the bigger one is I run a pest control business too. So like what I really brought to the table was I kind of went like, I can do your books, like I can create a budget for your show. Like I can do all that I can do all those kinds of things. Like I can help create wealth. And it's important because like what really happened with PWA that nobody had done before is we took a step. Like, well, we stuck our neck out. Like, it was like the jump from going from like a community hall to a place like even Paddington RSL or Max Watts or the Star Casino, which we ran with 1,100 people. You go from paying the amount of money that a sleepy community hall costs to paying a professional music venues costs. It's a risk. Wrestling in New South Wales, at least, nobody had charged more than $15 for a ticket, ever. It just hadn't happened. Because and also every show had to be kid friendly. So like, hey Piers, hey Joe, hi Facebook user. I tell jokes, Sean. I tell dad jokes. All I do when I'm talking Jordan's blog. I can tell you dad jokes soon if you want to, but that's all right.
Absolutely. Dad jokes are welcome, bro. I'm a dad too, man. So.
I love it. I have the right now. No one take a swing. So it was just about like having somebody who was, I think, confident enough in the product and doing something that we could do to really just like put themselves out there financially. Because I mean, if you draw nobody in a community hall, you're gonna lose a few $100. You draw nobody at Max Watts, you may be bankrupt. That's it may cost you, it might be down 10 grand. It's just one of those things that like somebody really had to like, I think that's the difference. I managed to talk everybody into going, let's just fucking try. Let's just try. Let's just do something. If it doesn't work out, then we stop. But like, we gotta do something. I'm bored. Like we can't keep just doing RSL clubs. Like we can't keep doing Powerhouse, like Casula Powerhouse. Like this isn't what I want. Like, because the thing, like we talk about my trips to America, like after I did 4 trips to America, my goal was to work for WWE. That was what I wanted. And it'd still be great, except that I don't want to live in America. Like I just don't want to. Like, the walks to Houston were depressing because I would pass hundreds of homeless people on the way. Like, that just doesn't exist. Like there are homeless people in Australia, but not like that. Like I met a homeless 2-year-old while I was in America. Like I saw a guy, like we got stopped in the middle of the road while we were in Los Angeles by a disabled dude in a wheelchair who was homeless. And they had their wits about them. Like they were just in unfortunate situations, and and all the stuff with like, even you look at the COVID stuff now, you look at the school shootings and stuff. Like I'm just like, if that's your dream and that's what you want to go and do, fantastic. Like working for WWE would be great, but just like, my dream is to be a professional wrestler, but still be able to live in Australia. So through force of will, we are attempting to build Australian wrestling to the point where like, we don't have to move. Like we live in a holiday spot. Like I went to this beautiful beach and park and stuff on Sunday. It was 20 minutes from my house. Like, I was born into this just beautiful like Sydney location, and it's just like if we could make a living, if we could do wrestling here on a stage that was still getting the big crowds, we're still having the amazing shows and the big screen in the background and the thousands of people and all that kind of stuff like that. But I still get to live here. Like that's the ideal. That's the ideal situation. So that's what we're building towards. And until we get to that, or until we go bankrupt on the way, then we're just going to keep taking swings. I think that was the main thing that I brought to it, especially too when it's kind of like, oh, that's too much money. And then I can like mathematically prove like, well, it's not. Like if we spend this much money on this and this much money on this, and we set tickets at this price, and it comes into here, we'll make this much money on top of it, assuming we get exactly 172 people. And they can do, like that's what I can bring to the table. Like it's nothing beyond that. Is that I don't think there are a lot of people, like most people who run pro wrestling companies are passionate pro wrestlers. They're not business people.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm my profession happened to be accounting, and I also happen to understand wrestling, so I was able to meld the two, and that's really all I do. We're not the only ones, Like the other successful companies, like I know for a fact they have accountants and stuff like that. Like they have people who do their books that have all that kind of stuff like that too. So like we're not the only ones, but I tell you what, all the successful ones have that. Because you got to stop looking at it like it's a passion project. You got to start looking at it like it's business. Like some of what happens in pro wrestling is you hear guys say like, okay, you're not going to make any money out of that show. And they go, well, we don't care. We're not doing it to make money. And I go, well,
why
none
are
of
you
it
doing
is to make money, really. Like if I were to put the same amount of time into a different business as I do into wrestling, I could probably make more money in that thing. But what you've actually got to look at it like is if your business doesn't make money, then what you're doing, fans don't like it enough.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it's an indicator. Like if nobody is coming to your shows, it's because your shows aren't good
quality.
And the money is I mean, not necessarily. It could be poor advertising. It could be any other thing like that. There are a myriad of reasons why maybe people don't show up. You could have run against grand final day accidentally. Like there's tons of stuff like that goes into it. But generally speaking, your objective measure is, did we spend less money than we made? And if you're consistently losing money, then it's like, well, fans aren't coming to it. Yeah, but if you're doing something really good and fans are flocking to it, then you will make money. Like it's the only way you can measure if what you're doing is you're doing a good job. So that's how you've got to look at it. Like the businesses that make the most money are also the best product.
Yeah,
like
you look at it holistically as well, like you got to look at it as like to say, well, I don't care if we make money, then you're not doing a business, you're running a backyard fed essentially. like let's be real. I mean, who wants to sit there and fork out all this money and not see a return to profit? That's not a smart business sense.
It's just insane. I think it's insane.
Oh, dude, it's dumb. Like it's just straight out dumb. But did you get any pushback from PWA when you wanted to come in with all these strategies? Were some of them like, oh, I don't know, or was it like, okay?
Yeah. No, the main thing was the 18+ switch. That was where the most pushback came. And again, I'm talking about, whenever I talk about things, it sounds like I'm talking about me against. It's not me. Like there are tons of guys.
No.
You know what I mean? Like I'm just talking from my perspective, so it's easier. But the concept of it being 18+ was discussed in detail, because it's always been a family-friendly event that you do on Sunday Arvos. You sell it to kids. The parents don't really want to be there, but their kids drag them. And that's how you get extra fans, because then you get the adults who have to come with the kids who want to come, and that was always the idea. And I'm just like, well, what if we just quadruple ticket prices? So it's just a different thing. But where it really came to crunch time was when we ran Paddington, because we had the opportunity to have Will Ospreay, and we needed a proper venue on a certain day. And a lot of these venues just kind of go like, do you want to have kids or not? Because the way the liquor law works is they can have kids in the building, but there has to be like a petitioned off place that those people can drink and nobody else can. And they have to have extra security making sure that people are sticking in the right areas and doing everything. It's this big headache, and they're just kind of like, it's just a lot easier if we just don't allow kids in. Like, is that okay? And I'm just kind of like, what do you guys reckon? And they're just kind of like, oh yeah, we're not sure. And I'm just going, yeah, fuck it, yep, do it. that was the thing. And then we had a try, and then we sold it out, and it was awesome. Like it was just the sickest atmosphere in this little venue, because people are screaming like swear words, and they're getting drunk, and they're doing all this other kind of stuff. It would have been extremely inappropriate if a 5-year-old had been sitting next to them. It would have hopefully made them uncomfortable, and they wouldn't have done it. But that would have meant that it would have taken away from the atmosphere of the show, because you don't want little kids seeing that. So we take them out of the equation.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, because and it also opens you up to a lot more of the hardcore wrestling fans as well by doing it that way. like Newey Pro, I've compared to ECW and that sort of environment. You know what I mean? Like, and I know we're talking about PWA, but Newey Pro runs at the same place every single time as like the home field advantage, and the crowd know what's going on. They know the performers, they know the storylines, they know the gimmicks. And like I can just imagine having like kids going to like a night at the end at the Newey Pro arena, at the Newey Pro show, and just seeing like, but that's the thing. I think it definitely does give you a broader audience to those hardcore fans. But yeah, 100%. And I think you probably lose a little bit with the kids, but
nah, I mean, like the thing you got to think of is that kids don't have their own money.
Exactly.
If you can market directly to the adults, you get more. Like one of the things was like I talked to Concrete Davidson about this quite frequently, and because his gimmick, even when he was doing kids shows, was he was an old-timey strongman. And he's just like, kids do not understand Concrete Davidson, but the parents think it's hilarious. Even if the parents hate the rest of the wrestling, they all love Concrete Davidson, which means he sold 20 times as much merchandise as anybody else because the adults would buy all this stuff because the adults had the money. Whereas if the kids go to their parents and go, can I have a t-shirt? It costs $30. They're like, nah, mate, you can't have that t-shirt. Whereas if the guys had a couple of beers, he's like, Concrete Davidson, I want to buy a fucking t-shirt. Like, and he sells 20 t-shirts. Like he's just like he's just kind of worked out. Oh, I shouldn't market myself to kids. I'm gonna make a lot more money by marketing myself to their parents, which is a different kind of thing. And then also like I think the argument was like, oh, you don't have kids, you cut your thing out. And I'm like, well, if you have a kids show, you can't charge more than $10, $15 for kids tickets. Whereas like with Max Watts, the stuff that we do and the way we perform, like front row tickets are more than $50.
Yeah.
You can't have that with a kids show, but also, we don't lose money there. We lose money because Max Watts takes all of it. But technically speaking, from a pure revenue, not less expensive standpoint, it doesn't really, it hasn't worked. And I think it was a worthy experiment. But the other thing is too, like if we're trying to differentiate ourselves from everything else that's out there, and everybody else is family friendly, and then we go black label. Only adults are allowed to see this. It's kind of like it's a little head turner. It's like, oh, what's that going to be different? You know what I mean? I mean, the main difference is we can say swears. So
yeah,
some of the storylines are more in depth and a little more adult themed. But I mean, yeah,
fuck yeah. But you've also had opportunities to wrestle some of the biggest names in the business. Kalido, X-Pac, Zack Sabre Jr., and you actually wrestled Nick Aldis for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, which is just, cool. Dude, that's cool as fuck. Like, so talk to me, man. Like, how did these opportunities to wrestle these names come about for you? Because it's, man, like just looking at the list of the guys that you faced across the ring is amazing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good answer. Well, on that note, guys,
like this stuff, like I tell you what, like the funny one was House of Hardcore, because they brought me up to this was the Carlito match. They brought me up the first time, and they were just like, Carlito was not announced for the tour. They said that they've got all these names. We got Tommy Dreamer, we got Billy Gunn, we got this. And we have a surprise guest, and nobody could work out who the surprise guest was going to be. And then, like, they didn't tell me who I was wrestling. I said, you're going to be on the show, but we'll figure out something for you later. And they didn't tell me I was wrestling the surprise guest. They just didn't tell me what I was doing. And then they walk up to me at about 4:00 on the day that I'm going to wrestle and go, okay, man, we got your match worked out. I'm like, cool, man. Like, who am I wrestling? I'm expecting one of the wrestle, like one of the local guys in like the dark match or something. And it's goes, so you're wrestling Carlito. It's going to be I'm sorry, what the fuck did you just say to me? Like, Carlito, like, I didn't know he was there. Like, nobody picked him as the entry. It was just, like, it could have been anyone on the planet. It was Carlito. I'm just going, like, what? Like, what? Like, it was just this, like, Jesus. And especially when, like, you like to have some time to think about what you're going to do in a match. Yeah. And then you get sprung with Carlito 3 hours before you've got to wrestle him. And then the guys from the School of Wrestling who doesn't talk about their matches ahead of time. And I'm just sitting there going, I'm just like, we didn't discuss the match. It's just like,
whoa.
And I had to like ask me, are you going to beat me with the backstabber or with the roll the dice? Like, it was just like, backstabber. And I'm like, It's like,
I like that you went up there and said that, but I would have really have laughed and fucking popped if you went up there and said, "So, Kalito, who's going over tonight, bro? You or me?" That to me would have been.
This is one of those things that you kind of hear about. Like, I really enjoy certain promoters and stuff who talk about stuff like they kind of go like, "Okay, man, so you'll be taking the fall tonight." I'm like, "You reckon?" like, but they're really respectful about it because they talk to you as if there was any chance that I was going to pin Carlito. But like that's just the way Tommy Dreamer would talk while he does it because he's being respectful, and it's beautiful. Like Tommy Dreamer was always great to work with too. Like it's one of those cool things. Like when you meet people like that, and they must meet a million people, but then like you see him for the second time ever, and he remembers your name. Like that was one of the things that always stood out to me about him is the fact that he like a year later remembered who I was. That was just I just thought that was.
Tommy Dreamer, I reached out to come on and do an interview on this show, and he came back to me and he declined, but he declined in a way which was so polite and so lovely that I was like, "So is that a no?" Like I had to read it a couple. Oh no, he was an absolute sweetheart about it. And that's the thing. It's like I think in the world of wrestling, people can be dicks, they can be vindictive, they can be arrogant. But also they can be really, really sweet and caring people. And you know what I mean? And that's the thing that I've noticed a lot since doing this show and being involved with it, that, the people that go into pro wrestling, they're not all, you can't have these preconceived ideas. And I think that's, Tommy was a prime example of that, But, wrestling Nick Aldis for the World Heavyweight Championship, I can imagine that would have been just another one of those surreal moments for you. Tell us about
that because I said to him ahead of time, and I go, "Listen, man, all I want is a photo of me standing like face to face with Nick Aldis with the belt being held up like this because I'm fighting for it, and they didn't have a photographer."
Oh.
And I'm yet to see the footage, so I actually have I just want the photo with the old school belt that Dusty held above it while I'm looking up at this guy like I'm gonna fight him for this title. That's all I wanted from it, and I still haven't gotten it. I actually should chase that one up. But that's one of those things you'd frame on your wall, like just that.
Absolutely, dude.
Fighting for
that's something you tattoo on your back.
Yeah, that was cool, and yeah, that was really great. Like it was just one of those things because it was in Queensland, and so I'm from New South Wales, so it was like I was afraid that I might be booed, even though that was not my position. That was not my role for that match. But no, they were really good. It was a really good crowd. So that was just a great experience. It's just such a cool thing. It was just that was one of those real things. And wrestling X-Pac too, like on the World Series wrestling shows too. Like there was just ridiculous things. Like whoever would have thought that I would take a Bronco Buster and a fucking X Factor from X-Pac, and I took a hell of an X Factor. Like I don't think anybody's like jumped and spread and like done the whole thing. But then at King of Trios last year, we got to wrestle fucking Scott Steiner. Like it's just one of these things. Like we wrestled as the Nations versus I can't remember what they were calling themselves. It was Scott Steiner, Petey Williams, the inventor of the Canadian Destroyer, Petey Williams. And Jordan Grace. I'm just like, what are we doing,
dude?
Like and like talking to him because Petey, Petey put the match together. That was his role. Like you don't go and approach Scott too much. Like you don't want to annoy him. I mean, they were all awesome. But then like it's just kind of like he had to take something, and he was just like, why don't you give me that move that kid Jeff does? And I'm like, that kid Jeff. But eventually it worked out. He was talking about a twist of fate.
He's calling Jeff Hardy a kid.
Calling Jeff Hardy a kid, like kid Jeff, like his brother, and his brother, they were that tag. I'm like, are you talking about the Hardy Boys? Like, so it was just like whatever. But that's why I just walked away from the match going, I gave Scott Steiner a twist of fate. But getting all the things that you could ever do in a million years, I like because especially when you're a wrestler, like you don't want to come across like a big marquee fan. Like, so you don't want to kick a guy in the stomach, and go and then do a twist of fate, because you got to develop your own moves, you got to develop your own styles and stuff like that. Like if you just do the move, it's okay. But like generally, you avoid trying to copy the more famous guys, big stuff, if at all possible.
Of course, yeah.
The guy who does an ankle lock. So like you got to try and do that. So like for me, who's never done a twist of fate in his life, to do the kid, like the move that every kid sat on their couch and pretended to be Jeff Hardy, you go, I'll give their brother a twist of fate or like that. I got to go and do that to Scott Steiner.
Dude, like the 15-year-old you being in the ring with Scott Steiner was just probably sitting there going, oh my fucking God.
Yeah, and then the other thing is too, like I walked backstage and I was like, "Hey, Peter, you want a beer?" He's like, "Yep." And I just sat there and drilled him with questions for 2 hours, and I just kept feeding him beers while he just kept telling me things. He told me in person how he invented the Canadian Destroyer, like just stuff like that. You would like when would you ever think you would get a chance to have a conversation like that? Like especially when we're in Australia. So like the first thing you do when you walk in is they're just like, don't ever think you're gonna make a living out of this. Like you don't meet people like that on a regular basis. But then all of a sudden, you do a little bit of traveling and you just get thrust into this situation with these top level guys that you've never had any experience interacting with on a regular basis. And then like I'm just sitting there going like, yeah, I always wanted to ask you. I never thought I'd get a chance. How did you come up with this move? And then he just sat there and just talk to me about it, because he's not an active pro wrestler anymore, so he's not like inundated with this stuff all the time, I don't think, because he spoke to me a lot about his dog too. He's got a real passionate relationship with his dog, and
but that's the thing, you talk about the Canadian Destroyer. That's one move that's just been it's been ripped off by everyone. And
I mean, what is it? There's the DDT and there's the Canadian Destroyer. Like he added a tapestry and the super kick. Like he added a tapestry to pro wrestling. Like he did that. And the thing that he said is that he didn't invent it. I think Amazing Red and oh God, it kills me that I can't remember the guy's name. Maybe Jack Evans or something. Like they actually did it in a match, but he said that he was in the please, if Petty Williams ever sees this, feel free to correct me. I'm going from memory from like 2 years ago. Like it was like he was in a car with them and he heard them describe the move. So he didn't actually see them do it, but they're the first ones to do it. But the way he heard it being described, because that's pretty cool. And when he tried it out, what he tried out was not what they did. Because what they did, I think it was Amazing Red. He did just a different variation of a Mysterio bomb. God, I'm talking about Amazing Red. I'm calling it a Mysterio bomb. You know, talking about.
Yeah.
But he did a different version of it, and instead of going around the arms, he went around the neck, and so that's where he turns into the pile driver. So it's a little bit of a different thing, but he did it this big run and this whole different thing. But Petey Williams is when he heard it, he goes, "Oh, okay." And then when he tried it out, he did it from like a powerbomb position. He did it from standing. So he actually kind of heard somebody else describe it and did something kind of different with it, and then got it over. And it was just one of those lessons where he talks about like the difference between inventing something and getting something over. Like, because he just kind of like, I didn't actually like invent it, but I'm the one who got it over. Like, and I'm the one who made it famous, and I'm the one who did this, which is just a totally different marketing thing. And he wasn't trying to take credit away from those other guys. He was just saying like he
was able to just tweak a little bit. And get it over. And that's the thing, man. Like that move, I remember seeing that for the first time and just being like, oh, TNA, whoa.
Yeah.
You know, like that was the thing, was just like that had me going. But Mick, but Jack, getting into PWA and also the Jack Bonza character, how did you come up with the gimmick? Like, what was it about? What were you looking for when creating the Jack Bonza character?
I mean, like it kind of evolved a little bit. Like originally I started as I was Bluey Bonza because I didn't come up with my own name. And then when I went to California for the first time, I actually worked for NWA Hollywood at the time. And I wrestled oh God, I'm so bad with names. I should remember the guys that I wrestled. Gunnar Scott. He's in
WWE now as Jackson Riker.
Yeah, something like that. So I managed to wrestle him. But when I wrestled for NWA, of course, are a lot more about, presenting a realistic product. So they said, Bluey's not a real name. You have to come up with a actual first name. And so that's when I came up with Jack. And so it just kind of came together. And then for a while I didn't really do anything. This is what I'm talking about, like back then there wasn't the same training, and like there wasn't the same people teaching you and telling you to do things. We weren't given a lot of guidance around how to actually do gimmicks and characters. Like they kind of talked about it, but I never remember being like taught or given like a lot of examples, or this is what you need to think about, or this is what you go through, until really going to Shikara. And then they kind of helped out more then. And then I was just trying to think about what I would do. And then I was more in a tag team for a while. And I don't think people think about their tag team gimmicks much, right? But like when I started tagging with Adam Hoffman, like I'm the red one and he's the blue one, which again is a branding thing, because like when you look at like even like you look at the old Noah guys, like Tao would always wear red, or Masao would always wear green. Like, but you know them by their colors, and you could be looking at them from a great distance, and you would know which one was which because you could see the one in the red trunks and the one in whatever. So I was the red Power Ranger. Like I was the one who had red. My gear is always red or black with some red or something like that, and that's part of my branding. But what we actually did was a fire and ice gimmick. He was cool and I was angry, and so like he would like. I would be pissed and he would kind of hold me back and he would shake the guy's hand and he'd be like, everything's good. And then he would kind of distract them and I'd nail him and we'd do something. Like, and we had to be a contrast because the tag team was a contrast to each other, which was like fire and ice, which was the whole kind of thing. And then when that started to die down a little bit, I started concentrating more on the individual gimmick. And the big thing was like, I'm trying to come up with ideas, and coming up with ideas for yourself is much harder than coming up with ideas for other people. It's just, you're too close to it. Yeah. So what I did was I wrote down all these different things that I thought that I could suit, and then I ran them past my wife, and she's like, "Oh, you dress as an army guy could be hot," and I'm like, "All right, army guy." Like, so I'm like, "All right, let's get the headband like Rambo, and then do the fucking thing," and that was whatever. And I kind of have an authoritative voice. I can kind of portray that character, but then you got to try and think of like, you don't want the character to just be superficial. It can't just be you dressed in army clothes and nothing else is different. So I was like, okay, so I have to wrestle in a disciplined fashion, everything, and which I think lends itself to the mat wrestling. Like you have to go like straight in, aggressive. You're not doing anything that's not going to work or isn't effective. And then also you have to think of what the background character is, because like a lot of what wrestling is like, it's like comic books. It's like it's an allegory for something that's happening in the real world. So like you look at like Jack Bonza, and he's the army guy, but what is he really? Like he's a drill sergeant, but what is a drill sergeant? In a way that people in the audience can identify with it. A drill sergeant is a bully. They deliberately bully the people underneath them in an attempt to break them, like verbally, physically, whatever. So most people can't identify with the drill sergeant, but most people understand what it feels like to be bullied. So as a drill sergeant, I attempt to bully other people. And then you have characters like Robbie Eagles or Big Fudge or something like that who are underdogs. And so it's kind of easy for me to give them crap and be down on them, whatever like that. And then people start to see themselves in the underdog. And then when the underdog starts to fight back, they feel good because it's like they're fighting back against all the bullies that they've experienced in their lives. And, and that's kind of what characters are. And so that's what I've always kind of more led towards. Because I mean, I have the bald head, I have the whatever. Like I kind of look like a jarhead. Like I could be in the army. And so like because your character's got to be congruent with you too. Like the best one at it is Mick Moretti. Like his character, he wrestles exactly the way he speaks. Like he does his gimmick the way he wrestles, and those things need to be perfect. And most people don't have that. So if I was to pretend to be, I don't know, if I was, thanks, Carl. if I was to be like, I don't know, if I was to pretend to be like a Fabio or something like that, who was like a romantic or whatever like that. Those guys are not bald, so it would take you out of it if I didn't have long blonde hair. Like you can't do like a bald guy wouldn't have that, but an army guy would. So I needed to do something that reflected the way I looked, the way I could talk, and the way I could wrestle. And then the army guy kind of slotted into that. And it's been successful. Like I would say that most of my success comes from more my in-ring performances and less my gimmick until we stumbled across the Kingsley gimmick, and that was the game
Uncle
changer.
Jack.
Yeah, Uncle Jack, because the thing is, right, and I'll let you in on the secret, the reason why Kingsley is my flag bearer is because she makes me look like a giant. Kingsley is 4 feet tall. So, like, when she's standing next to me and I come in behind her, it's like, holy crap, this guy's this intimidating presence. And plus, she's fucking awesome at it. Like, she's so good at just being this little pit bull who's waving the flag and doing all this other shit. She's so good with all that kind of stuff and all that character shit. Like, she's just honestly the best. So bringing that in is like, it kind of worked well. And then, the thing in wrestling, right, is that there's always that romantic relationship. Women are always presented in a sexual fashion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong with that, I think, is that that's all they're looked at as, or at least that's what it has been for a long period of time. So my suggestion to her was, I said, like, okay, what if we let people know that you're my niece? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what if we actually make that a thing? And then we kind of have this dynamic that's more of a daddy-daughter dynamic. Like, the thing that we really did, because one of my characters that I like to base Jack Bonza on is Red Foreman from that 70s show.
Oh,
nice.
Like,
But you look at guys and say, you look at something like, the main problem I had with Jack Bonza for the longest time is I didn't know, like, your character has to have a weakness. Like, your character is not a good character if it does not have a weakness to it. You cannot create someone who is perfect. Like, it just sucks. It's boring. There's no way to challenge them. There's no way anything's going to happen. So what is Red? Hi, Joel. What is the Knights got down on the weekend, didn't they, Joel? Oh, he's a big Knight supporter, that dude. Got trashed by the Rabbits. I'll see you on Saturday, buddy. And so we're trying to create a weakness for him. And I was looking at, like, Red Foreman, and it's like, what is Red Foreman's weakness? He's afraid of his wife. His wife terrifies him. Like, he's always calling everyone a dumbass. He's this tough dude, he's whatever like that. But his little sweetheart of a wife screams at him, and he loses his shit. And his other blind side is his daughter. His daughter's like the worst. Like, she's a devil. But he thinks that's a sweet little princess. He doesn't see it. So my idea was, I'm like, okay, how about you do this real bratty character? But in my head, you're a perfect angel because you're my niece, and you're whatever like that. And so she can get away with murder, but I refuse to see it. And that's kind of how we created this little kind of gimmick. And I mean, we did it in the most minimal fashion. And it got over so big that we were just like, oh no, we're onto something. Like, it was just stuff like, because she always would do the flag bearer, but when she debuted at PWA, I waved the flag for her. The pop that we got from the crowd when they realized that I was waving the flag for Kingsley's entrance was intense. Like, so you just kind of like, and I just kind of thought, like, there's never been a gimmick like that. Like, the gimmick has always been girlfriend, or you're having sex with a woman, or she's a sex object, or you're using her ass to distract the audience, or stuff like that would never happen at PWA because the women are there to be wrestled. If you want to, I mean, they're attractive women too, and they can do that in their own time. But like, it's kind of like, but when they're there to wrestle. They're not there to show their butts. Like, that's not how we're ever going to present them. And it's the same with that. It's like, okay, we're not going to present this as anything that could possibly be interpreted as romantic. It's going to be that we are literally related. Like, and once we start doing that representation of, like, that sweet daddy-daughter dynamic, I don't think that's ever been done anywhere in wrestling before. As far as I know, that's completely unique, and it just gets over so strongly. Like, it really is this, like, we tapped into something very powerful there, and that's probably the best. I think that's probably what my character got to. So it's kind of like, it's a series of flukes, really. Like, I work very hard at it, but it's not my biggest talent.
But you mentioned, like, the male and female side of dynamic of things where people look at it from, like, oh, they're romantically linked, or, in the world of pro wrestling. But that's like kind of like society. It's like, you see someone who might be married. Oh, a married man who's got a female friend going out and having a coffee with her. People would even today in 2020, people would look at that and go,
yeah.
Well, hang on, he's not married to her, and like, it's like, get with the times. But
especially when, like, if you ever see, like, what me and Kingsley are like in real life, I'm basically her grandfather. Like, it's nothing like, and it could never possibly be interpreted that way. But we even had, like, even when, I mean, the guy obviously hadn't seen any of the stuff; he was just showing up at the show. but he yelled out something like, "Oh, someone's getting lucky tonight," and we just went, "Oh!" And like we actively turned the rest of the crowd against him, and then I had him kicked out.
Wow. But you know what?
He didn't just make one comment, like he was being gross, and it was like
just being vulgar. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any tolerance for that kind of crap. And I mean, the good thing about the PWA shows, especially with the audience or anything like that, is we usually have something like 8 professional security guards. Like that's the advantage of having it at proper security stuff like that. If anything ever happens in the slightest, like it's literally just you out, like, and then they just swarm, like they go in, they have proper plans and everything like that. Everybody's like always looked after. Like we've had tons of incidents that have just been looked after immediately because we have professional security guards and on top of all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's the other big plus side of using those more expensive venues. But yeah, the Uncle Jack gimmick is definitely the best.
I love the promo or vignette, whatever you want to call it, where it was like Kingsley was in the cafe and the prefix came in, and then you just came and stand over and you see these like, you know, the people prefix just looking up and like this like holy fuck moment, like shit, we better get it's time to hightail it. And the way that you guys did that interaction of it was just absolutely phenomenal. Like, yeah, like Kingsley's been on this show before, and she's a absolute phenomenal talent, and you know what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing. But look, we have just gone past that 1 hour mark, and I really want to be respectful of your time, Jack. But guys, this coming Saturday, Wrist Locks and Pile Drivers PWA show out in Ingleburn. I just got a ticket to it tonight, so I'm actually going to be heading out there on Saturday and seeing the show. So I'm really looking forward to that. You know, Jack, where can everyone find you? Where can they support you and support Jack Bonza and PWA?
PWA is PWA Australia on everything. And I'm mostly on Instagram. I started to try and do TikTok, but I didn't understand it. So I kind of stopped.
I'll teach you some dance. I'll teach you some dances, man. I've been watching Shazza McKenzie's. I think I got it down pat.
Listen, I got 2 things. I got one. The first thing I want to push. I am a type 1 diabetic, right? So yes. It's October. It's the walk for awareness with diabetes. So I'm actually raising money for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation right now. I have to do 120,000 steps during this month, and then we're trying to hit a goal of, I think they're trying to raise $85 million this year for research into type 1 juvenile diabetes. Like just one small thing. My actual biggest fear about becoming a father is that my son is far more likely to be diabetic because I'm diabetic. So I'm trying to, I don't know, I guess I'm throwing shit into a wall here, but like if anybody wants to go on my Instagram, find the post, donate to Juvenile Diabetes. It's a very, very good foundation. Currently trying to raise money for that. If anybody wants to check it out. The show on Saturday, #PWAWAP. So you get that wet ass pro wrestling happening. And then what was the other thing? Oh, I've got a Kingsley and I have another promo coming this week.
Awesome! I can't wait to see that. But I'll also share that for the diabetes stuff on our MWA profile as well. I'll also share it on Facebook and Twitter to get the word out there. So everyone who's watching the show can please go to our social media and they'll be able to find that, no problem at all. But Jack, thank you so much.
Check the show out on OVO Play. OVO Play
and check it
live stream.
OVO Play as well, guys, where you can catch all PWA action. I'll post the link into the comments. Guys, make sure you check it out. Check out PWA. Support your local wrestling. Support indie wrestling. And just love wrestling altogether. But, guys, I will see you guys very, very soon. Jack, I'll see you on Saturday. You guys have been watching Shooting the Shit Uncensored, and we have had an amazing time. Jack, thank you again for your time, and thank you, everyone, for watching.